This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host Maura Donnelly. Hi, Maura.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, did you go to the farm show this year?
No, I did not. I know that he had that whole virtual thing going, and I was really sad because I was trying to find a milkshake. I did stock the milkshake truck around town.
There
So
are so many people who look forward to those milkshakes, don't they?
They're the best.
And they're just a byproduct of one of the most important industries. Some people believe it's the most important industry in Pennsylvania, and that is agriculture. And to talk about agriculture in Pennsylvania, we have one of the best people in the Commonwealth to do that with us today, and that is Chris Herr. Chris is the Executive Vice President of PennAg Industry Association. Chris, welcome to the show. It's your first time with us, and we're delighted to have you.
It is, and great to be with you both today. Thank you.
Well, could you tell us a little bit, to start the show off, could you tell us a little bit about PennAg Industries Association, when it was started and what it's designed to do?
Pleasure to talk about something that I love so much. PennAg's been around over 140 years. We started out representing the millers and those who in the grain business back then. We've evolved into an organization that represents about 500 agribusiness companies, about 100% of the hogs and chickens in Pennsylvania. We have 8 different councils that support agriculture here in the Commonwealth and throughout, anywhere from small mom and pop operations to large corporations that are in the agricultural business. So very proud to have been around. We used to represent those millers on issues like transportation and environmental issues 140 years ago. We're in the business of doing pretty much the same 140 years later.
Well, Chris, I'm not sure that a lot of our urban watchers know that agriculture is the #1 industry in Pennsylvania, correct?
That is correct. Sometimes argued by those in the tourism business and some of the other manufacturing businesses, but we claim to be the #1 business in Pennsylvania, and we think we can back that up. 3 times a day at least people eat, and it's important. It's important. I think food security and the importance of agriculture throughout the past year has even been highlighted more. So it is a $80 billion a year industry here in Pennsylvania, almost $8 billion off the farm, and a significant employer and job creator here in Pennsylvania.
Well, Chris, you brought a point to my attention that I was not aware of. Many Pennsylvanians are aware that agriculture is the leading industry in Pennsylvania, but we don't understand how agriculture is broken up. You had pointed out to us that 75% of all Pennsylvania agriculture is related to animals. That's something I don't think many Pennsylvanians understand, and this puts a whole different perspective on agriculture when you realize that so much of it is involved with animal husbandry.
Right. Well, here we are. We are the Keystone State up here in the Northeast, close by to 150 million people. We're very diverse, but we are 75% of our agriculture is animal agriculture. We rank in the top 10 in 30 different commodities. We're #3 egg producer in the country. We're top 10 in swine production and broiler production. So yeah, we're a big agricultural, animal agriculture state. And I think, the point to make, we're in a state with 13 million people. We seem to be able to coexist with a lot of animals and a lot of people. The #1 non-irrigated ag county in America is Lancaster County. We have 550,000 people down there, and a significant amount of animals, and have been able to coexist but not without challenges. Having all those people around certainly put challenges related to animal health, to the environment, to water issues. So we've been a bellwether for a lot of different parts of the country. The issues seem to come either to Pennsylvania or a place like California first. So we're dealing with a lot of issues before anybody else in the country, just because of the pressures from the large population that we have here.
Well, and I understand that you actually deal with pandemic type issues on a daily basis. Tell us a little bit about that.
I've kidded around from time to time that maybe the pandemic would have been better handled by a veterinarian than a public health doctor. Obviously, I don't want to take issue with or make issues with the public health officials who've done a fine job. But things like avian influenza, African swine fever, these are could certainly be parallel to the the COVID-19 that we're dealing with today. But these are issues that we have dealt with for many decades. You're keeping a lot of livestock in some confined areas, so keeping them healthy has been a challenge. It's been something we've learned a lot about over the last 30 or 40 years. And there's a lot of principles that are applicable to the pandemic that we've all gone through too. So things like biosecurity. You can't visit a hog house in Pennsylvania without taking a shower. That shower is not to protect you, it's to protect the hogs. You don't get into an egg laying facility without going through lots of biosecurity protocols. Those are things that we're all learning about nowadays in our everyday life, but it's something that agriculture has dealt with for generations, and keeping those animals safe is our number one priority.
Well, Chris, what does Pennsylvania do to ensure that we have a steady and sufficient number of veterinarians to take care of all these animals?
Right. Well, we're fortunate to have one of the best veterinary schools in the world, the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia and suburban Chester County with New Bolton Center. We're very fortunate to have that facility. We work with them on a daily basis, and having veterinarians willing to work in mixed practices. A mixed practice would combine the dogs and cats that so many Pennsylvanians have with the livestock that is so important to our economy and feeding the world. So we work very closely with them. Incentives to make sure that the kids going into veterinary school have interest in taking care of our important livestock industry. And there's definitely a connection between Pennsylvania agriculture and our veterinary school at the University of Pennsylvania.
So just like any other industry in Pennsylvania, I imagine you have to deal with an onslaught of regulations. Tell us about the types of regulations that have challenged the not just your organization but your industry over the years, and what you do about them.
Right, and that's one of the main reasons why an organization like PennAg exists, is to work through that process. Look, we're upstream from the Chesapeake Bay, which is an important waterway. Many influential people in Washington, D.C. Cherish the bay. And Pennsylvania is part of our responsibilities to make sure that our water is clean and our air is safe to breathe. I always consider farmers to be the first environmentalists, and they care about that. But regulations has made it very difficult. It's been difficult to expand. And I think a lot of that has to do with the disconnect between where we get our food and agriculture. I was asked a question when I was a deputy secretary, why is it necessary to harvest livestock when you can just go to the supermarket and purchase meat? That's a true question. That's something I got. So I think that highlights the disconnect that we have between where our food comes from and outside the supermarket, and much of the general public is very disconnected from that. And it's why we need to educate our regulators, whether they're at our Department of Environmental Protection, our Department of Agriculture, our Transportation Department, These are all things that help feed feed our population. But to do that, we need to be able to produce food, and look, it happens on the land, and that means there are issues related to the environment that need to be overwatched by our government. But the ability to continue to grow and meet that need is a real challenge.
Well, Chris, this time is going very quickly here. In the last minute, could you also talk about, isn't there a disconnect between the public and the public understanding of workforce that's necessary in agriculture as well? I mean, I believe there's a need for a lot of labor in the mushroom farms in the southeast and in the orchards in the south central part of Pennsylvania. Could you talk about workforce, agricultural workforce in Pennsylvania?
Absolutely. Labor is extremely important, and immigrant labor is extremely important. We have Amishmen who hire Mexicans to milk their cows. I think that puts things in perspective. The immigrant labor is very important. It's very important to figure out a workable immigration system, because quite frankly, many of the commodities that you pick up in the supermarket wouldn't happen. They wouldn't be there without the hard work of the labor force, and much of it an immigrant labor force that we are fortunate to continue to have here in Pennsylvania. So a real challenge, the regulations, but also having folks to work in agriculture, two critically important issues we're dealing with.
And where can people go to find out more information about your organization?
Sure, go to our Facebook page, PennAg Industries Association, or our website. Lots of interesting things we've done over the years to help educate folks. If you have questions about agriculture in your community or how it affects your community, please reach out to us at PennAg.com.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. It's been a pleasure having you on, and we hope you'll join us in the future very soon.
Great. And hopefully we'll be back at Farm Show next year, and those milkshakes will continue to flow.
Okay, we'll be right back right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
And welcome back to Behind the Headlines. In this segment, Mara and I are joined by Jan Waltz. Jan is one of the directors of the board of the Pennsylvania Winery Association. And Jan, we asked you to be on because Mara and I have been witnessing over a good number of years the fabulous, fantastic growth in the wine industry in Pennsylvania. It's somewhat, even from many onlookers, hard to believe how quickly vineyards have expanded in Pennsylvania. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk a little bit, please, about the Pennsylvania Winery Association, when it was established and what it does?
Well, the association has been in existence over 30 years. It represents the production and the membership as far as the legislature as well as the consumer. So it's a big fold that we work with, and all the laws that go into winemaking as well as all the pleasures of the consumer side. So it's a big field that the association deals with.
Laura?
So I know, as Charlie mentioned, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth. And would you tell us just briefly, you are actually the owner of a winery. Tell us, give yourself a plug. Tell us where you are and how people can find you.
Well, Waltz Vineyards is located in Manheim, Lancaster County. We've been here since 1997, but my family's been here farming for over 6 generations. So it was a offshoot into the grape industry that we got into the wine industry. So it's kind of a twofold. We spent 10 years growing grapes and selling grapes to other wineries. And that is a good agricultural commodity that I think Pennsylvania really has to consider, because we don't have enough grapes here in the state to supply all the wineries. So in 2008, my wife and I opened up Waltz Vineyards, a state winery, and started selling wine, because we worked almost 8 years growing or making wine in the garage, so to speak, before we opened our facility. So now we have 3 locations. We sell to 24 states, 35 acres of grapes, and we are an estate winery that produces grapes right here in Lancaster County. And we do not have to grow tobacco anymore. So that's a great thing.
Jen, can you tell us about the special role of soil and of weather in terms of the establishment of vineyards? Those are very important ingredients, aren't they?
Yes, they are. The water holding capacity of the soil is around the world is the one denominator besides climate that's the number one factor. And a well-drained soil is important because we're in an area of higher rainfall, but we need to have soil that can moderate the excess rain that we get. So just like in Europe, it's kind of the same way. They have soils, but remember, they've been farmed for thousands of years. So here we only have soils that have been farmed for 200 years plus. So there's a learning factor in there, but we know we have Beddington silt loam, so it's a shale soil that drains excess water. So it's very similar to Bordeaux, Burgundy, Northern Italy. Just hasn't been farmed for centuries.
Well, I did read that we have more wineries than covered bridges in Pennsylvania. And I know the covered bridges are a huge attraction, tourist attraction. So tell us a little bit about the tourism aspect of wineries in Pennsylvania, because it sounds like it should have a pretty significant impact on the state.
Well, you can find a winery in every county in Pennsylvania, which is great. You might find vineyards at that winery or maybe not. So they source their juice or grapes from another location within Pennsylvania, Erie or the Southeast or Lehigh Valley or central part of the state. But basically, you can find a wine within an hour of your location anywhere. And if you don't like the wine they produce, you can find another one another hour in the same direction. So there's, with the 300 plus, when we started, there was only 80 wineries in Pennsylvania in the 90s. So now we have 300. So it's a really diverse, from basically rural or also in the city. So it's a whole bunch of options that you have as a consumer to find a wine that you really like.
Well, Jan, now that Pennsylvania produces so many grapes that we're number 5, I guess, in the production of wine, what can you tell our viewers in terms of Pennsylvania winning national and international prizes for our wine? How are we doing in that respect?
We're doing great because we have a lot of diversity. And if you go to Erie as an example, or the central part of the state, just more of a Germanic style of wine. If you come to the central and the southeast, it's more Burgundy and Bordeaux. So because of the climate, we have so many different grape growing areas that grapes are very specific to a climate and soil, that Pennsylvania really gives us a huge diversity. So I would pretty much categorize Pennsylvania as all of Europe. You can find a wine from northern Germany in Pennsylvania, or you can also find one from southern Italy in Pennsylvania. It depends on where you go, and within 30 minutes, it will really change. So I think that's one of our strong points that we have here.
Well, I know that our state park system has what they call some sort of state park passport. Sounds like the Wine Association should create a passport so people can travel to every county and get a stamp.
And we're working on that right now.
Are you? Oh,
yes.
See, brilliant idea.
Yeah. I think within the next month or two, the Pennsylvania Winery Association will have a passport that you will get stamped as a reward to going to a winery in your backyard.
That sounds like a great idea. And just one of the other sort of fun facts about wineries in Pennsylvania. Wineries in Pennsylvania apparently are older than the state of Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It goes all the way back to Fairmount Park, Alexander Hamilton, and Burr, and there's a whole host of our founding fathers prior to us being a country that tried to grow grapes here because they were familiar with the wines of France and Spain, and they wanted to grow grapes here. Unfortunately, the climate and phylloxera were a detriment, but now we have basically moved past that situation from 200 years ago and kind of got back on track, but it took us 200 years to find our way. That's the best way to say it.
Did science play a role in that?
Science played a big role. Prohibition played a big role. That was a big gap that drove a wedge in the science. Back 80 years ago, 100 years ago. Now we're back on track again.
Jan, I never realized until he started to look at this a little more closely, that Pennsylvania has 5 separate areas that grow grapes: Cumberland Valley, the Lancaster Valley, the Central Delaware Valley, the Lehigh Valley, and the Lake Erie area. Are these areas competitive with one another? Are they cooperative with one another? Do they all grow different types of grapes? How does the whole industry pull together?
Yeah, they do. It's not a competitive. To have an AVA, it takes 5 years, 10 years of, and a lot of money and a lot of paperwork to allow the federal government to designate an AVA. So, I'll speak for Lancaster Valley. It's in my backyard, but I'm 30 feet basically, or 10 minutes or less, 2 miles from the boundary. So we are just outside of that area. So I would not say that you want to use that as a buying standpoint in Pennsylvania, but there's similarities to how they apply those zones to California. So if you go into Napa or Sonoma or Central Valley in California, they have American viticulture areas that are based on climate and soil. So within Pennsylvania, it's the same criteria. Lancaster Valley is basically a limestone soil for Lancaster Valley. We're in a shale-based soil just a little further north there, but it's a building block, and that's the best way to say it. For Pennsylvania, we're great. It's a great thing to have 5 designations within the state, but because we have so few wineries within that, it's not a selling point for us at this point. But there is stylistic differences in the grapes and the wine styles. So you can taste the difference of an Erie wine versus Southeast wines. So that's the best way to say it.
Well, Jan, we've run out of time, unfortunately. I know Maura has more questions, and so do I. Will you come back for a future show?
I definitely will. And I would recommend to all your viewers to visit a winery in their neighborhood. And if they don't like that one, find another one, because we have 300 within Pennsylvania.
Well, we thank you again for being on Behind the Headlines, and we will look forward to having you back in the next few months, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back again next week, same time, same place. We'll see you then.